I'm a professional accordion player. No, I'm not. I'm actually a singer-songwriter, grew up in New Jersey, and live in the wonderful state of Tennessee. I want to go back because it was about 4 years ago I was introduced by Dusty Wells to Mary Ann. Now, I didn't meet Mary Ann the very first event. It was a Veranda Christmas event. And Jeff and I were sitting at a table, and we heard for the very first time this incredible ministry called Veranda Ministries, and something inside my heart just absolutely fell to the floor because it was exactly what I was looking for in a benevolence way of using our gifts to try to help an incredible ministry like this. I think creative ideas on marketing, ideas on different kinds of opportunities to reach a culture that knows nothing about aging. Unless you're involved in aging, you know a lot. But my goal as a board member would be to tell the average person, the average churchgoer, the pastor that has no clue that he desperately needs ministry within his congregations on how to present the gospel, even to those who not only are cognitively impaired, but those who are aging, because we all know that the lost art that we have right now is those of us who are getting older are not really important anymore. So my goal would be to get the word out even more, not just about aging per se, but the incredible ministry of Veranda. The podcast came actually as an idea when I was sitting doing my own one day, and I said to my husband, I said, you know, one of the things that we've been so good at, there's not a lot, but there's a couple of things that we've been really good at, and that is relationships, building relationships. What if we took the incredible giftings of Mary Ann and what she offers to not only her clients on a daily basis, but to the caregivers who come that so desperately need help? What if we had some sort of way that we could get the word out even more? And so podcasting was not something that was in my wheelhouse maybe 5 years ago, but I've been a professional student for about 6 years, and I am honored to say that the Aging Angst and Alleluias podcast was a birth of our hearts, first of all. And I'll never forget the luncheon that Mary Ann and I had together. We talked and we said, what are we going to do? And we were like, we don't know. We had no idea that it would take a life of its own on. And what we've decided is by not only incorporating the knowledge piece of the aging community, but to really speak to the caregiver's hearts. And that's our goal. Our goal is to speak to every caregiver every time they turn that little or press that little knob on their phone, if they're listening on their phone, if they're listening on their computer. Relationship-based care is something that's, let's just face it, it's just not happening in a lot of scenarios, but I'm grateful that it is in the Veranda Ministries, and I'm grateful what it does on the podcast. Here's an example. When I was a kid, we had two relatives in our family. My great Aunt Myrtle, who wore 6 watches on her hand because she was afraid she would forget what time it was. And then my grandfather, who was so wonderful. But yet, as he aged, we noticed that he was losing his memory and losing the fact that I was now his daughter, not my mother, and my daughter was his granddaughter. So we noticed that there was some serious things. But by relationship-based care, I think one of your other guests said it really, really well. The problem is that in the past, maybe 50, 60 years ago, there was no such thing as some of the programs that we know. But yet families got along. Churches were able to help their people in their congregations. It was almost as if we didn't need a professional to come in to tell us how to take care. Wouldn't it be something if we had not only the professional aspect of, caring for those who are cognitively impaired, but yet still use the same premise as the New Testament talks so greatly about, is that building each other in hope, building each other in caregiving, never forgetting what we did 50 years ago, but using the modern technology. And so that's the same thing with the podcast too, is that we're putting the word out where we didn't have that 50 years ago, but now we're able to speak to people's hearts. And hopefully, as we've said many times on the podcast, and forgive me for repeating myself, if we could get just 1 or 2 or 3 churches who would become on fire, not only for the gospel, but for reaching their aging community, they would stand in amazement of what God would do with that congregation. Because there are people right now that are just waiting for someone to say, hey, what if we did a specialized ministry for the aging in our group? I guarantee there would be people that would rise to the occasion, but we're not giving them the opportunity. All we have to do is say, here's an idea. Here's a way of presenting the gospel. Here's a way of caring for the aging groups in our churches that are being neglected and being forgotten. Here is an idea, and then run with it. Praise God for that. Here's my greatest fear. My greatest fear as you watch this. You might be saying right now, this doesn't apply to me. A few years ago, I got to tell you, I would have probably said the same thing. Every one of us at one point in our life are going to come in contact with a relative, close friend, even a husband, a spouse, whatever, that's going to eventually need desperate care. Wouldn't it be awesome if you and I had a chance to take advantage of the education and not only the knowledge piece, but to prepare yourself for what's to come? Now, that doesn't mean we walk through fear and we walk through the anticipation of being afraid, but being prepared for the future also allows you to know that there is an incredible opportunity through the Veranda Ministries that you don't even have to go any further when it comes to help that you might need for your loved one. Or, let's just say this, maybe you someday. So all that to say, the verandaministries.org is something you need to check out because it greatly changed my heart. It does every single day. And when I'm on the road and I speak to people across this nation, I see the desperation of a ministry like this that's so needed in our churches around the country.